If you take the powertrain of a 3rd gen Tundra and then you turn it into an SUV, you get the Sequoia. Now, if you give that Sequoia a little bit more off-road capability, like the newest Land Cruiser, you put them together, sprinkle a lot of luxury on top of it, then you're left with the Lexus GX550. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Talon and I make new videos every single week. So if you like what you see here, then consider clicking subscribe because there's a lot more content coming. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this video is a little bit out of my realm for a few different reasons. This is the first Lexus product that I'm ever really talking about here on the channel. This is also the first SUV that I'm really diving into to bring you guys content around. And also, it's probably the first like true luxury vehicle outside of Sprinter vans that I'm ever covering here. So again, this is a little bit out of my realm, but my friends at Toyota North America put me in this Lexus GX550 for the past 7 days, and I kind of like it. I don't think I like it quite as much as you guys seem to like it. I posted some photos over on Instagram and I said, hey, let me know what you want to see me do with the GX550. And a lot of you guys were stoked, saying it's like your dream car. You want me to buy this and modify it, lift it, put tires on it, wrap it, and do my typical thing. This is just a loaner, and that will not be happening at least anytime soon. If I'm being super honest, this is a little bit out of my own personal price range, and a luxury vehicle doesn't really fit into my current life situation, but that is kind of a story for another video. Now, I'm gonna do my best to answer all of the questions that you guys asked me over on Instagram, and if you wanna jump around and look for something specific, I will leave some video chapters down below. You can scroll on the timeline or check for them in the description. There's a lot to get into, so we're just gonna jump right into it. This vehicle that I've been driving around for the past week is a 2024 Lexus GX550 Luxury Plus. It is finished in their incognito color, which is probably my favorite color out of all of the Lexus products right now. And the GX shares the GAF platform introduced on the current generation LX products. This is a strong and lightweight ladder frame, which increases body rigidity and improves on-road handling because, again, this is a luxury vehicle. That being said, though, the platform is definitely engineered to withstand twisting off-road forces. It'll maximize suspension performance. It creates a stable wheelbase with articulation and consistent tire contact to the ground, which gives you a lot of traction for off-road scenarios and at the same time, really nice in-cabin stability. Now, the most familiar piece of this platform to me is definitely the powertrain. Under the hood, you will find a 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 connected to a direct shift 10-speed automatic transmission. This is a highly capable and efficient system. I am, of course, familiar with it in my 2024 Tundra, and it will give you an EPA estimated 15 miles per gallon in the city and 21 on the highway. The twin-turbo V6 produces 349 horsepower, definitely outperforming the previous generation's V8 of only 301 horsepower, and the torque output also rises up to 479 foot-pounds of torque. The twin turbochargers deliver steady and consistent acceleration, and from my testing on my own truck and now the GX550 for the past couple of weeks, it makes it really manageable for all different driving conditions, both on-road and off-road. Now, depending on which trim level you get, you can have a towing capacity up to a little bit over 9,000 pounds. And that's going to be for your Premium, Premium Plus, and Overtrail Plus models. Then you also have the Luxury and Luxury Plus, where that tow capacity drops just a little bit. So this specific vehicle will tow about 7,600 pounds. Now, the GX platform definitely has kind of like a cult following over the years, and they're really known for off-road performance, which is kind of interesting going into a Luxury Plus model. Me personally, I would probably opt for something like the Overtrail or the Overtrail Plus, which gives you a little bit more off-road functionality and a little bit less creature comforts on the inside. This thing is completely packed with things that I didn't even really know Lexus was doing. Again, I'm not one to purchase a luxury car, so a lot of the stuff in this vehicle is fairly new to me. But that being said, it does share the same platform across the board, so this thing does have a few features that will allow you to drive off-road or on some trails like you will see me driving on here today. Now a little bit about the exterior of this vehicle. It comes standard with triple beam LED headlights and LED tail lamps with a really cool bar all the way across the back tailgate. You have power folding outer mirrors and a ton of technology all around this vehicle. The Lexus Safety System 3.0 lane tracing assist, roadside assistance, pre-collision systems, and a lot more. This comes equipped with 22-inch alloy wheels, which are two-tone finished, a dynamic sky panorama glass roof, as they call it, and there's a lot of cool things going on with that. I'll give you guys a closer look once we get on the inside. There are power retractable running boards, which you can switch on and off depending on your situation. And this specific model is optioned with a few different extras like headlamp washers and windshield wiper de-icers. And it's also optioned with these gloss black roof rail bars up there, so you can mount anything like a ski box, cargo rack, or any other accessory that you can think of. Now there are a ton of features packed into this vehicle, so I think the best way to go about this is to just bring you guys around the vehicle with me, both inside and outside. And I'm just gonna walk you through it in real time to show you some of the features that I like, some features that I don't really care for, and then we'll go for a drive, check it out up here on the trails in the Appalachian Mountains, and have a good time with it. So first and foremost, there are definitely some split opinions on this. However, I think this is one of the best looking SUVs that has been released in the past year. It's very boxy, there are sharp lines all around it, but I think Lexus did a really good job kind of paying homage to their older vehicles while bringing them up into these newer years. Here we have a look at those triple beam LED headlights, and the turn signals are found just below that. This right here is actually for the headlight washer, and I haven't found the switch on the inside to actually activate that yet, so we'll look for that once we hop inside. We have fog lights down below, and then on the side here you'll notice another kind of smaller light, and these are what's known as cornering lights. So if you are at a stop and you have your turn signal on, these will illuminate in the direction that you are turning, and as you turn the wheel they will kind of come on and then turn off, giving you much greater visibility at night. Here's a closer look at the wheel and tire package as well. Definitely not my taste, but fitting for a luxury vehicle. The Overtrail comes with a smaller size wheel and a little bit of a taller tire, which is obviously going to be good for off-road. This is not a great off-road setup, if I'm being honest with you guys. But again, the platform can definitely do some light off-roading. It's just not going to be as comfortable as having a smaller diameter wheel and a little bit more tire underneath there. A lot of people were already asking about how you can get this thing lifted. Can you fit a 35 underneath here? And I think the answer to both of those questions is definitely yes. The Overtrail and the Overtrail Plus model actually come with a 1-inch lift from factory, so I believe you could fit a 35 under there without trying too hard. For a model like this, you could probably squeeze a 35 under here, but you may need to put some kind of suspension on there just to get things up for a little bit more clearance. But if you're buying a Luxury Plus, you're probably not taking it off-road very much. Now these mirrors are very familiar looking, again, very boxy, but this is very reminiscent of the Land Cruiser. The visibility out of this car has been phenomenal so far, and it makes it very easy to drive. Down here you can see the powered running boards and how they are in their kind of tucked away position. Since this vehicle is not very tall right now, I actually have those disabled, but when they are enabled, you open the door and those will pop down. We'll check that out a little bit more once we get on the inside too. We have glass from the front windows all the way to the back, again, really helping with the visibility. And then coming around to the back of the vehicle here, very cool taillight design. These LED tail lamps here. This bar illuminates all the way across, and it looks really cool at night. Down here you will find your tow hitch hidden behind this little plastic shroud, and I have not actually tried this yet, but I believe if I run my foot underneath here, like I have something in my hand, the tailgate is powered and will auto lift for you. There is a ton of room inside of here, and we'll get into that in a second. We have a button up here to actually close that. I really appreciate that that is powered because this is a fairly expensive vehicle. Now just over here on the back glass, if we tap that button, you can actually open the rear glass, which is nice. You can kind of throw stuff in here like the bed of a truck. If you are set up at camp and you have dogs hanging out back here, they're gonna love to stick their head out the window. And underneath the glass actually is where you will find a backup camera that has some multi-functions. There are a lot of cameras around this entire vehicle. And again, we will talk about that in a second. You do have a rear windshield wiper here, and I kind of wish they would have done one tucked up underneath this kind of rear spoiler here. I think it would just be a little bit cleaner, and I think it would hide away really nicely there, just really kind of sharpening up all of these lines back here. Over here we have a massive fuel door, and that brings us right to the inside. Let's get inside of here because it is pretty cold outside. Now let's start by taking a look at the door cards here. Soft touch material basically everywhere you come in contact with this door, except down here where we have a little bit of plastic. You have a little bit of storage inside of here, water bottle pocket, and all of your door controls. Let's actually turn on all of these features. Right here down by your left knee is where you will find your auto steps. When they are in auto, that running board comes down just like that. If the vehicle is lifted, it's definitely going to be easier to hop in and out. But again, this vehicle is not very tall from the factory, at least this model. So for me, that kind of just gets in the way. When you close the door, that will automatically retract just like that. And they come down pretty quick when you open the door. Also on the door card here, you'll notice the Mark Levinson sound system. This thing sounds pretty good. I don't think I've ever driven a vehicle with a system like this in it before, but for a luxury vehicle, it's definitely on par with other things that I have experienced in the past. Also on the door, you will find all of your window controls, a lock, your power mirror controls, and you can also automatically retract them if you get into a tight situation, whether you're driving in a city or driving off-road. You can tap a button and pull those mirrors in to hopefully prevent some scratches. Now moving over a little bit more, this is where you'll find your odometer and trip set. You can change the brightness of the digital dash. And then you have the Lexus memory settings here, so you can set your seating position as well as your steering column position. Right here is actually an electronic control, so you can move that in, out, up, and down, and then program that to your driver profile. That way, if you are sharing this vehicle with someone, all you have to do is tap your button when you hop in, and it will go back to your own settings. Down here is where you have the hood latch, your fuel door latch, and then parking sensors, auto lift gate, as well as your inverter controls. Now the seat that I'm sitting in here, as you can see, is dual tone. So we have what they call saddle tan leather in here with kind of this like dark gray or almost black trim. This is typically not an option that I would choose personally, but for a luxury vehicle, it is definitely fitting. I think the interior of this thing looks very nice. Down on the side of the seat is where you'll find your electronic controls for lumbar support, the backrest, sliding forward and backward, and on the driver's seat, just the driver's seat, you can also extend out the leg here for those longer driving situations when you just want a little bit more support. Now let's hop up in here and turn this thing on, get some heat going. I'm going to hold the camera completely steady here as I turn the vehicle on, and you will notice steering wheel comes out and the seat moves forward slightly back to my driving position. So now let's take a look at this digital gauge cluster here. Very nice with 3 different customizable screens. This is going to be very similar to any other Toyota product that you may have experienced over the past year or two. In my first screen here, if I press and hold, I can actually customize all of these different parameters here. Over on the left, we have a turbo gauge, engine transmission oil temperature, auxiliary gauges, trailer brakes, your pitch and roll angle, and then in the center, we can change things like from a tack to a map, as well as your driving supports, adaptive cruise control. Over on the right-hand side, fuel economy, as you can see, I'm getting about 16.7 miles per gallon right now, which, to be honest, isn't great, but again, you have that twin turbo V6, a ton of power, and that was mainly city driving. I have not really driven this thing on the highway too much. This thing actually has a G-force meter. It's my first time seeing that, so that's pretty cool. You're not going to be pulling any crazy G's in this, but it does have Sport and Sport Plus mode, so this thing can definitely get up and move out of its own way. Now down in the left-hand corner here, that is where you will find your drive mode, so let's hop over to that right away. Over here by the gear selector is where you will change that drive mode. You have the drive mode button as well as tow haul, traction control, things like that. So if we come back to the dash here and change this, it will give you an animation of the mode that you were in. So normal mode, this is how the car comes. And believe it or not, I've actually been driving in comfort mode right here because that really softens up the steering, the suspension, it quiets up the entire vehicle. And this is a luxury vehicle, so I've been driving it around while very comfortable this entire week. You have an eco mode, and then if we bump all the way up, you can go into Sport S or Sport S Plus. You got some cool animations there. And then bump it up one more time into a custom mode where you can change all of the different parameters. Now I have not actually changed anything as far as those parameters go. Let's see if I can figure out where that is. There is a lot of information on this screen over here. I'm going to assume it would be in the vehicle customization in the settings. Custom drive mode. We have the powertrain. You can choose between power, normal, and eco. Suspension, comfort, normal, or sport. Steering, normal or sport. And then you also have controls for the air conditioning if you don't want that robbing power in your sport or sport plus configurations. Now, before we dive into that screen anymore, let's first come back to the steering wheel here. Really nice controls. You have everything for your infotainment over here, controlling your menus, phone calls, voice talk, and then all of your cruise control, lane assist modes over here. I have not even put this thing in cruise control yet because, again, haven't really driven much on the highway. We also have paddle shifters up and down over here. Again, not something I've used. It's kind of funny to have paddle shifters in a large vehicle like this, but if you really want to select your gears going up and down mountain passes, I guess it is nice to have that. Over on the left stalk, we have all of our lighting controls, and then over on the right stalk is where you will find all of your washers and fluids and stuff like that. Now let's move over to the screen. We have our engine stop start over here and this massive infotainment screen, which also kind of doubles as your climate control, seat controls, and stuff like that. So when you have it in the map mode, you have a really large map screen on here, and it actually dips down all of your other controls. But in any other mode like music, phone calls, or your vehicle settings, it's going to give you access to everything down here. Now, I've been driving around with the seats in auto. These seats are heated and cooled, as well as the steering wheel, which is heated. But there's one more trick with the seats. This one is a little bit hidden in the menus. I'm not sure why they didn't add it to the screen. Maybe Lexus can do that in the future, but if we are in the vehicle settings like I am now, and I go to seat controls, click massage, and then pick which seat I'm sitting in, I can actually turn on massaging seats with a few different options: upper body, lower body, lumbar. You can change the intensity. And this was a feature that I kind of found as soon as I got into this vehicle, and I'm going to be honest with you, it is super bougie. It is really nice. It feels really good right now. I can feel these little balls kind of pushing out of the seat into my lower back right now, and I have it on the mode where it will kind of go up and down your body as you were driving. I will say though, this is not something that I am used to, and it can be a little bit distracting while you're driving. However, long road trips, if you've been on the road for hours and hours and you're just kind of driving in a straight line, I would definitely have these massaging seats on for an entire trip like that, because it's fancy, feels good, and it's probably going to keep you more comfortable while you're driving longer distances. Now I'm going to leave that on while we go through the rest of this. This screen, of course, is compatible with wireless CarPlay, Android Auto. You can hardwire in with this USB port right here. We have another USB-C port for charging. We have a 12-volt plug down there for anything that still uses one of those old school outlets. And then back to the screen, this is where you can get into more of the climate control coverage. This is something that I haven't seen before. S-Flow, it will direct air only to occupied seats, so might as well turn that on. That's pretty cool. This is where you will find your optional de-icer for the windshield wipers. And then you can also go into more vehicle settings. This is where you will find all of your driving aids: lane departure assist, blind spot monitoring, parking assist. If we scroll over, you have controls for your heads-up display, which is going to be very hard to see because it's bright out here, but there is a heads-up display found right here. You can enable and disable everything right here. Rear cross traffic alert, which I found that to be a little bit intrusive. It is definitely doing its job, but if you are an attentive driver, I feel like the alarms go off a little bit too soon. And then after a couple seconds, that thing will automatically close and go back to the screen that you were just previously on. Now, I said in my last video of a different vehicle review, I don't like having touchscreen climate control, seat controls, and stuff like that. So one thing that I do like is that they do actually have manual dials right here to control your temperature. This is dual zone climate, of course. I have everything synced right now. And this is probably the most interacted dial in a climate control system. So I'm glad that they actually made this a wheel to turn. I guess I could live with everything else being on the screen here, but the fan control is on here as well. I've basically been leaving the climate and auto synced up, the seats on auto heated and cooling, and then auto on the steering wheel heating as well. Now moving down a little bit further, here we have some cup holders, which are decently sized. I'm not sure if you're gonna be fitting like a big Stanley in there, and you can also close that up when they're not in use, just kind of cleaning up the interior look a little bit. We have a wireless charger down here, which I talked a lot of crap on in the last video. This is the first wireless charger in a Toyota, or I should say Lexus vehicle, that actually works. I had my phone sitting in here for a little bit of a drive, and it works really well. One thing that I don't like though is that it's kind of angled over here. I'm not sure why they didn't just make it a flat tray all the way across, but I am happy to report that this works, and I appreciate that. Down here we have controls for your four-wheel drive system. This is basically four-wheel drive all the time. You can go into high, low mode, and then you also have a center locker. This is using a Torsen limited slip differential, and when you lock that up, you're gonna get 50-50 distribution all the way around. So in off-road scenarios, that's definitely going to come in handy. And then moving back to the center console here, you think you might have a lot of storage. We have a cool box. If you've never seen this in a Toyota product before, it's essentially a refrigerator. It's blowing cold air in there, and I've actually used this thing. I drove this vehicle to the gym for the past couple of days, and I threw a protein shake in there, and it stayed cool until after my workout. So you can turn that off and on with a switch right here. You could use this as a little bit of like regular storage if you don't want to use it as a refrigerator, but pretty cool luxury feature right there. Now over on the passenger side, there's a little bit of like a snack shelf here, so you can put things in, glove box, pretty standard. And then moving up to the top here, we have the rear view mirror, which is linked to that camera. So you have a full camera view out the back in case you have a lot of gear in the back or people. You don't have to look through their heads. You can simply flip that and get a digital live feed from the back of the vehicle. And then up above that, we have touch sensitive lights. So if I just tap this like plastic glass piece here, that's actually how you turn the lights on, which is pretty neat. You have more lighting controls here, and then the pano roof on here. You will notice we have this massive roof above us here, but if I tap open, it's going to pull back that sunshade and give us access to a lot more light in here. Now, as you can see, it's kind of frosted. You can see the shadow of the roof bars up there, but this other switch next to it, this is like magic. I'm not exactly sure how this works. I haven't really looked into it, but if I tap this button, I'm gonna point you guys at the glass. Check this out, ready? Now it is completely transparent. You can see the roof bars, you can see the trees out there. If I tap it again, it's gonna go back to its frosted state. This actually works if you leave it on and then turn the vehicle off. It will go back to being frosted as well. So it kind of acts as like a security feature. It probably will limit the amount of heat that's being soaked up in here too. So if you don't want to have it closed and darker in here, you could just leave it on the frosted mode like that. And this is a really cool feature. I've just been kind of switching this on and off, back and forth, just because it's like magic how that works. Now for driver position, cabin space, I mean, this is a larger luxury vehicle, definitely compared to what I'm used to, and this thing is incredibly comfortable in my opinion. The vehicle at first seemed very big from the outside, but after driving it around for the past couple of days, it actually is really manageable. You still have a ton of cargo space on the interior, tons of headroom. I mean, I can kind of like lounge around here. I can telescope the steering wheel closer to me if I want to. And basically it feels like you're driving around in a lazy boy recliner, which I like. It's definitely not my style, but if I just had a vehicle and say I had like a family of 4, or even a family of 6 could fit in here. This would be an awesome kind of daily driver, luxury vehicle to haul the family around and do normal everyday life kind of tasks. Now, while we are in my normal driving position, let's hop to the back seat and actually sit back here, which I have not done yet. Now, coming to the back of the vehicle, similar door card to the front, just one window control, still that Mark Levinson sound system all throughout. A little bit of that wood grain that you saw in the front as well, and then some sunshades back here. So if you have car seats for a baby, or you have some kids and you want to block the sun a little bit, these windows are tinted, but that will give you a little bit more protection. A lot of people like to call these peasant blockers, but I would never say such a thing. Now, in the back seat here, I'm about 5'10", 5'11" on a good day, and I have plenty of room in these captain's chairs. Now, this is going to be found on the higher trim models. On the lesser trims, you're going to get a bench seat across here, but I'm a big fan of these captain's chairs. Adjustable armrests here. You have some cup holders and a little bit of storage down in the middle. Car seat anchors tucked away behind a little Velcro flap there. That's definitely going to be important for most of the demographic that I would imagine buying these vehicles. And then you have your own climate control down on the front here. Both of these captain's chairs are heated, so you can get those on and warm up your passengers in the back. You can control your temperature and basically everything like you would on a standard system. 2 more USB-C ports down below, and then all of those climate control modes are going to be perfect for these vents found right here next to your head. There are a lot of climate control vents all the way throughout this vehicle, from the front all the way to the back, so that's definitely a nice touch. Some grab handles here, a little bit of a seat back pocket for your maps, because you know everyone is using Atlas maps in the year 2025. And then over on my left hand side here, if I grab this handle, I can actually recline this seat a little bit, and I could take a nap in this vehicle. This is super comfortable. Again, a ton of space, but the outside of the vehicle seems big. It's very easy to drive. It honestly doesn't feel that much different to me than the Land Cruiser 250s feel. So if you're looking for luxury, this is definitely it. Might just pause the video here for a second, take a quick nap. No, let's keep going. So here's a closer look at that saddle tan leather interior here with the stitching to match. I'm gonna push this armrest up and pull this grab handle, which adjusts the seat back. Check this out. Seats fold and flip forward, giving you really easy entryway into the back of this vehicle, where there is a ton of cargo space, but also a 3rd row option. So if I press and hold on this switch right here, seat's gonna come up, and check this out. What? The bottom of the seat actually pops up from the floor there. When these seats are all the way down, they are relatively flat. If you wanted to build something like a sleeping platform in this, you would have to do something to kind of fill this area here. So let's hop in here and see how this feels. You do have to manually put the headrest up. Not quite as comfortable as the front seat or the captain's chairs, but for kids or adults who need a ride, I think this is definitely doable. Let me actually pull this seat down, get a feel for the leg room. So this captain's chair is kind of in a more like upright position. Let me pull it back a little bit. I think that feels pretty standard there, and still have decent leg room. I mean, it's not the most comfortable thing back here, but for an adult my size, I could definitely go for a little bit of a trip like this, and I don't think it would be much of an issue. We also have the ability to recline these seats both up and back. Very little movement there, but it does make it a little bit more comfortable with it reclined. You have more vents up here, so again, everyone is going to be comfortable. Then you also have a USB-C port right down here, so everyone can be charging their devices, be cool or warm, depending on your climate. And then if you have cargo, you can fold up one seat or fold up both seats, depending on how much gear you have and how many people you have in the vehicle. Now, if the passenger in front of me hops out, I can just lift this handle, fold that seat, and then weasel my way back outside. I'm gonna come over to the passenger side now. We're gonna Rotate this seat up as well. And then coming around to the tailgate, automatically open that up. I'm going to pull this tab to put down that headrest. Controls over here. Press and hold. And that seat bottom will retract down, and now we have a ton of cargo area in here. This one did come optioned with some different mats right here, so you can keep the interior of this thing clean. What's underneath here? Looks like we have sort of a tire change kit. I'm assuming we have a spare underneath. Yes, we do. That's nice. Not all new vehicles come with that. And then back here, we also have the power outlet controlled with the inverter up front, which I showed you guys. You also have the option of a tonneau cover, which I removed. They call it a tonneau cover. It's basically just like a sunshade that comes back and clips into these right here. Oh, look at that. A little bottle jack found in the side there. So you basically have everything you need kind of hidden away here in the luxury of the GX550. Now let's put both of these seats up. I'm just gonna press and hold. We'll kind of see the speed here. Not the fastest thing ever, but relatively quick. And now your cargo space is really gonna be limited. So if you have 6 passengers, everyone in here I think will be fairly comfortable, but now you're limited to maybe like a foot of space back to the tailgate, and then the seats obviously slope up in the back, so you're not going to fit a ton of stuff back here. We have a first aid kit attached to the back there, so if you're shuttling kids around, this is a good option. But then also if you have a bunch of cargo, just press and hold and those seats will then fold away. All right guys, now it's time to go for a drive, and we're going to jump straight into off-road, which is mainly where I would be interested in using a vehicle like this. Again, haven't driven any GX off-road like this before, and this is like super light off-road. I mean, there's not much stuff out here, at least that I have access to, so we're gonna take it nice and easy. I'll probably mess around with some of the controls and we'll just kind of see how it goes. So right now I am, of course, in the regular drive mode. I'm going to put it into just normal mode for now, which will keep things as a nice baseline, and we're gonna try to keep scratches off of the press vehicle. I already went up ahead on the trail here and kind of cleared out any low branches, so we have a clear shot for a little bit of a loop here. Again, nothing too crazy, a lot of rock and shale around here, a couple little drainage ditches and stuff like that, and a tiny bit of snow too, because it is the winter here in Pennsylvania. So right off the bat, the power delivery of this vehicle feels very similar to the Tundra, but it feels smaller overall than the Tundra, so I would feel more inclined putting this thing onto tighter trails if that situation were to ever arise. The suspension, while we don't have that extra 1 inch of ground clearance on the over trail, we also don't have smaller wheels and bigger tires. I don't think we're going to run into any issues here. The suspension feels pretty dang smooth. Now the vehicle is adjusting in real time if we do have any like tire slip or anything like that, which we probably won't unless we get onto like an icy snowy patch. But for a vehicle that's luxury, you can cruise around on the road and be very comfortable. This is pretty comfortable on a trail too as of right now. Since this thing makes so much torque, it actually is very easy to control. You don't have to go very fast to have enough power to get over some of the rocks and things that we may find on the trail. This section looks very steep. Maybe we'll come back to that. Let's take it easy first. Now it's kind of interesting driving a vehicle like this off-road because I feel like I shouldn't be doing it, but the platform is kind of made for that. The more luxury a vehicle feels, most likely the less inclined people are to take it off-road. That being said though, this does have features like the locking center differential, which allows you to actually put it into some interesting situations. Like right here, we have a tiny little creek crossing, which really isn't going to feel like anything. Now, I don't really need to do it, but I'm curious how this center locking works. I think that was it. I just pressed it. I got a flashing icon on the dash right now. Maybe if I roll forward, it will lock. Yep, okay. Now we have a center lock, so power being distributed 50-50 between the front and the back. We're definitely not going to get stuck while we're up here. Now the difference between a luxury or luxury plus and an overtrail being the more like overland off-road friendly version of the GX550, we don't have any controls for like off-roading. So right now I'm going down relatively steep hill, I guess, just a little bit of a grade, and I believe on the overtrail you're going to get controls similar to Toyota products like the trucks that I'm used to. So in an off-road, you're going to have multi-terrain select, crawl control, and things like that. There are really no other selections for a luxury plus. You just have 4 high, 4 low, and a center locker, which honestly should be fine. I guess we could go into manual and shift using the paddle shifters. So here I'm in manual 1. It's still a little bit too fast for my liking going down this hill, so I am going to use the brake. Here we have some lower branches. Make sure we go slow. This is actually a plus of having this opaque or non-opaque roof. Now, can't see out, and now I can see out. And we are clearing the crossbars. So that's kind of a nice touch. I didn't really think about that from like an off-road perspective. Like I mentioned, the viewing angles out of this vehicle, no matter where you're looking, you can see everything. Speaking of that, right next to the climate controls, if I press that, that's going to take us into our view. There actually is a pretty cool feature on this. When I am at a complete stop, you can see like a 360 view of the vehicle from all of the cameras. I have a front camera on here. As I move forward, you will notice that your view of the vehicle becomes transparent. So it's actually capturing that video from around you and then projecting it underneath. That way, if I'm going over a log or a rock or any kind of like obstacle, it's kind of giving you a view through and underneath the vehicle, which could be useful in a lot of situations. I kind of wish they would have implemented that on like the TRD Pro Tacoma. I'm not going to find an actual use for that today, but in theory, I like the way it looks and I like seeing even more of my surroundings, especially underneath the vehicle. The camera system on this honestly looks even better than my Tacoma for some reason. The image quality is really good. I guess it has pretty good high dynamic range because, I mean, I'm pointed directly into the sunlight right now and the view on this screen looks really nice. I can see everything on the trail. You can see these branches that are very close, and we made it out. So that's good. Now here we have a little bit more of like a straightaway, so to speak, on this trail. So I'm gonna pick up the speed to just go a little bit quicker and kind of get a better feel for this suspension. Doing about 10 miles an hour. I think 10 miles an hour feels pretty comfortable. I'm gonna go back into the regular drive mode. 12 miles an hour. The suspension on this thing really works well with that ladder chassis, and I mean, I barely even feel like I'm off-road right now. Again, this is hardly off-road. This is really just like kind of smooth graded trails with a couple sticks and rocks here and there, but here's a bump. Feels good. Feels really good. If I were to own a vehicle like this, I would definitely want a little bit more ground clearance. I would want more tire because I would, of course, take it off-road. But for a luxury vehicle with that 22-inch wheel on there and a little bit of a low-profile tire compared to some other options, it feels pretty good. Turning radius, way better than the Tundra. The protrusions on the hood actually kind of work as like a gauge, so you can tell where your front fenders are at. They do stick out a little bit further than the bumps on the hood, but it's a pretty cool driving experience, and it kind of acts as like a sight line for you when you are off-road. Now I could go up into a higher mode, give me more power, like a Sport or a Sport Plus mode, but honestly, this V6 twin turbo doesn't need any assistance. Maybe if we were up in higher elevation, I would want a little bit more power, but as of right now, this thing feels great. So we've completed our loop, and now I guess we're gonna try to go up this steep section here. This one's gonna be a little bit hard to show, but I would feel fine taking my Tacoma up this. I would feel fine taking any like smaller vehicle up this, but because this is a loaner and I don't want to scratch it or dent it or anything, it does make me a little bit nervous. Haven't been up this way in a little while now, and this is where the center lock could come in handy. It's going to get very steep. There's a lot of leaves on the ground too, so it could get a little bit slippy. The GX550 is not struggling in the slightest. And we just have like regular kind of street tires on here. Here's a big dip. Ooh, and we have some ice on the trail too. Getting a little rockier, a little bit more snow covered. I haven't even seen the traction control light blink on this guy. So, doing a really good job. This is about as steep and as rocky as it will get in this area, so not much more to report other than that, but out my window here, starting to get a little bit of a view, which is nice. All right, here's the steepest section. Add a little more throttle. I mean, I'm barely on the throttle and it is just going straight up without an issue. Still comfortable, still planted. I did actually disable some of the sensors because as you get close to brush on the side of the trail, this thing was just kind of beeping and screaming at me, as Toyota and Lexus products like to do with a lot of their sensors. I feel like every newer vehicle just beeps like crazy for all kinds of reasons, but with some of those parking sensors disabled, it's nice and quiet in here. We're driving this thing for luxury, remember that. Just one more stretch here until we're at the top. Not sure if you guys can really tell how steep this is. The camera is kind of keeping like a neutral ground level, so you might be able to tell. Again, nothing crazy like I would experience at home in Colorado, but definitely a good test for a vehicle that isn't the off-road trim. Well, we have made it to our destination. Now I guess it's time to make our way back down the mountain, and then we'll see how this thing performs on the road and on the highway too. Time for some pavement. Back to smooth roads, luxury. Center lock is off and we're just in a normal standard 4 high mode. Didn't even try out low range because we simply didn't really need it. Now for the past week, driving this thing around as like a normal daily driver, I've actually been driving in that comfort mode because everything is a little bit quieter in the engine bay. The steering is soft and smooth. Same thing with the suspension. And if I'm driving a car like this, the Luxury Plus, I might as well try to get the best like road feel experience out of it. Not a sports car, definitely quite a departure from what I was driving last week, but I really have no complaints with this thing as of now. Everything feels super solid. I definitely feel the Lexus finishes over Toyota, just simple Toyota finishes. Everything just seems a little bit more refined, and that's something that I can definitely appreciate. Maybe not so much for an off-road vehicle. I would feel bad taking this thing off-road every single day, or as much as I do some of my own personal vehicles, but I'll never say never. If you have the money to spend for a vehicle like this and you kind of want the best of both worlds, then I could definitely get used to it. But for me personally, I would just feel bad taking a luxury vehicle like this on dirt and rocks all the time. So instead of just cruising in comfort mode, let's check out some of these other modes to make it feel probably more like my Tundra. Normal mode here, Can definitely hear that engine noise a lot more. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. You can definitely hear more exhaust note. You can hear the turbo spool up, which is cool if you're into that kind of thing. I'm not quite sure if this is heavier or if my 3rd gen double cab Tundra is heavier, but I would say they feel about the same. I would really have to drive them back to back to really notice the differences there. Now let's take it a step up from that. We're going to go into the Sport S mode. Immediately, the acceleration curve is much sharper. This thing gets up to speed very quickly. It's a ton of power for a vehicle like this, but at the same time, I think it's pretty fitting. You can seat 6 people in here. The interior cargo space is huge. The outside doesn't feel quite as big as it did when I first got in here. And I would say it's pretty zippy for a vehicle of its size. The steering is definitely tightened up just a little bit more. And now let's go all the way up into Sport S Plus. I'm actually going to slow down a little bit and punch it just a little bit so we can kind of get a feeling for how much power and torque we're actually getting. I'm just going to roll on it from 15 miles an hour. Oh. Okay, that makes it feel even faster than my Tundra at this point. Granted, I've lifted my truck, it's on 37s, I've got some weight on it, but man, I put it down like halfway there and my camera gear is kind of floating around on the passenger side over there. This thing gets up and goes, and that is the benefit of going with a GX550 over something similar like the Land Cruiser. Now, I do have a little bit of experience with the Land Cruiser, and basically, if you take my personal vehicles, a 24 TRD Pro iForce Max, that is the 4-cylinder turbo hybrid. If you take that drivetrain and put it in an SUV platform, you get the Land Cruiser 250. Now, if you take my non-hybrid 3rd gen Tundra V6 twin turbo and put that in an SUV, then you get something like this, the GX550. I mean, it's not slow at all. Woo! I don't think I've ever driven an SUV with quite this much power. I think this even feels, well, it is more powerful than the Land Cruiser for sure. And I almost prefer this power delivery over the hybrid power system. I wouldn't even want a 4-cylinder turbo without a hybrid. They definitely drive better than some older generations that came with like the V6, specifically speaking in like Tacoma language. The 4-cylinder turbo drives nicer than the V6 did with the new transmission and everything, but when it comes to an SUV platform, I think I would prefer this. Now, that being said, in an off-road situation, this is definitely very manageable, but I have become very used to 4-cylinder turbo hybrid that you would find in something like the Land Cruiser. Something about the electric motors makes it feel a little bit more smooth. There's really no turbo lag at all, and it's a really good experience when driving off-road. There's a ton of electronic controls in the Land Cruiser, like multi-terrain select and crawl control and everything that you would expect from Toyota. So that vehicle surprised me. It was very capable. I haven't brought you guys a full review of that platform yet, but I can definitely do that in the future if you're interested. So I think most people who are in the market for an SUV, even friends that I've talked to, I know, are kind of between a Land Cruiser and a GX550. From an everyday driving perspective, I would definitely prefer the GX550 over the Land Cruiser simply for how much power is here. I wouldn't be towing anything with a vehicle like this, but you do have a pretty high towing capacity, especially if you're not going with a luxury or the Luxury Plus. Almost 9,000 pounds of towing capacity with like the Premium Plus, the Overtrail. You're still driving a luxury vehicle, so everything is very comfortable and plush, and you have all of these crazy features on the inside, which is really nice. So from an on-road experience, I would definitely choose a 550. If I was going to be driving an SUV off-road more, like I was getting kind of a dedicated vehicle to really go on adventures with, then I might still opt for the 250. However, I haven't extensively tested one of those yet, so I can't say for sure. To be honest, I don't really think you could go wrong with either of them. It really depends on your budget. Now, speaking of budget, this is not a budget vehicle, as you can imagine. This trim with some of the options that came from the factory, this is probably one of the most expensive GX550s that you could get. It's sitting around the $83,000, $84,000 mark, which is a lot of money. I've noticed that a lot of people in recent videos like to kind of complain about all of these new vehicle prices, and I totally get it. Vehicles are no longer as cheap as they once were, but also you have to take into account all of the inflation that we've been experiencing, all of the new features and the new systems that go into these vehicles. So I think it is on par. I believe a base version of the 550 starts at around 63, whereas the Land Cruiser is pretty close to that. So if you are okay with sacrificing a little bit of features for a lesser model than something like this, I mean, this is fully loaded, then maybe jumping from a Land Cruiser up to a 550 would make sense for you. Or if you want to go really, really basic, you could get a core version of the Land Cruiser, get some cloth seats, and just have all of the off-road functionality, and then modify it on your own, and you would probably be happy with that as well. I'm definitely not in a position to own a vehicle like this that serves the purposes that it does at that price tag. However, if money was no option, I would definitely want to compare something like this to maybe a Sequoia. A hybrid Sequoia might feel a little bit more on par with this. I'm not exactly sure how it would feel off-road. I have no experience with the new Sequoia as of right now. But between Toyota and Lexus specifically, there are a lot of different options and a lot of choices that you can make to get into a vehicle that's really going to suit your needs the most. I think this one is going to be geared more towards daily driver, kind of like baller soccer mom car, and I'm saying that not in a bad way. This thing is definitely a head turner. The design is really sharp looking, great features all throughout, very comfortable, a ton of power, and I think as long as these things stay reliable, which it's a Lexus, it should be reliable for hundreds of thousands of miles, I don't really think you could go wrong with picking up a 550. Now, one last test here before I give you guys some of my final thoughts. We are on a highway. We're going to get up to highway speed, and I have heard people talk about some road noise with these vehicles, so I'm going to give it the best shot possible. We're going to go back down to comfort mode. I can already feel all of the bumps in the pavement kind of smooth out. We'll go up to highway speed. So here I'm doing 65, about 70 miles an hour. Feels very comfortable and composed. I think I do notice a little bit of wind noise, which is probably coming from the optional roof bars on there, but it's definitely not unbearable. That is going to be one of the downsides of a full glass roof like that. You're probably going to hear some more wind noise, but again, it's not awful. I think it could be improved slightly, but then again, I'm not used to luxury vehicles and how they should feel and sound. With the price tag starting in like the mid to high 60s, I think I could live with everything that this thing has to offer me so far. So I'm gonna go get this thing cleaned up, kind of knock some of the ice and mud and dirt off of it. I'll gather some of my thoughts and I'll come back with some final impressions. Well, last day with the Lexus GX550. I went into testing out this vehicle with very little expectations. I was just kind of going into it open-minded, and the only thing that I was really expecting was luxury, and it definitely delivered on that. The driving experience was very nice, comfortable on the road, and also surprisingly capable off-road. Obviously, we didn't do anything too crazy, but it gave me a good insight at what this thing will be capable of in the future, especially if I ever get some seat time with something like the Overtrail or the Overtrail Plus model. Also, the power, I kind of knew how the power was going to feel, but it definitely feels even a little bit more refined than the same powertrain on a Toyota product. and it was a very nice experience to drive this thing around. I do plan on checking out a lot of new vehicles this year, and maybe at some point I will actually test one out where I don't really care for it and I couldn't see myself owning one, but I have not found that vehicle yet, because I think it would be absolutely awesome to have a vehicle like this, just simply for the comfort, the utility, the cargo space inside. But again, at the price point and for how I use vehicles right now, this thing doesn't really fit into my personal vehicle lineup. So I know this might bum some of you out, but I will not be adding a GX550 to my personal fleet, at least anytime soon. Now, if I were in the market for an SUV, I want to go back a little bit to the conversation we were having on the drive between this and a Land Cruiser 250. I think those are the two easiest comparable products out there right now, and it's really going to depend on how you actually want to use a vehicle. I think between the two, just cut and dry, I would probably opt for the GX550. You get more vehicle, you get, in my opinion, a nicer drivetrain. This thing has a ton of power, not knocking the Land Cruiser completely, because I really enjoy all of the off-road features that come with that. And again, if budget didn't really matter, I would definitely opt for this over the Land Cruiser, but I think both vehicles are really nice. Another one to throw into that mix would be the Sequoia as well, which I don't have experience with, and I'm envisioning that to be very similar to the GX550, just without the luxury. So I'm going to definitely go with the GX550. Now, there has been a lot of talk about Lexus and Toyota products, but I want to kind of address some comments that came with some previous videos. Yes, I own a lot of Toyota products, and I've been talking about a lot of their vehicles over the past couple of years, but this video and any other video has not been sponsored by Toyota or Lexus. They simply gave me the opportunity to test out these vehicles. I have free will to say whatever I want, and everything in all of my videos, like always, is my own opinion. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. That being said though, I do really enjoy the products that they offer, the reliability, the features, just everything that comes with Toyota and Lexus products. But let's also kind of compare something else that would fit the GX SUV kind of luxury vehicle category. And this is one that I don't have personal experience with, but I think the closest competitor to this would probably be a Defender 110, which I think look incredible. I haven't driven one, I haven't even been inside of one, but it looks like a vehicle that has a ton of really nice features. The only downside, and I don't want to say this as a definite, but I think a Lexus product would probably end up being more reliable than something like a Defender. But again, I'm not like all of the comments that you read on the internet. I'm not going to hear one thing about a vehicle and then just spew it out there as a fact. So maybe they are reliable. I think it looks like a great car, and maybe if given the opportunity, I would review one of those as well. The reason I have been testing out a lot of Toyota products and Lexus products is because they know that I am an owner, and they saw my videos, they like what I do, they gave me the opportunity to test these out. And again, not being paid, this is not sponsored content, but if anyone out there would want me to do the same thing with a different brand and their own vehicles, then just hit me up, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to get into some more in-depth reviews with other products out there, and maybe we will cross that bridge a little bit later this year. Now, the reviews are not going to just stop at the GX550. I do need to get back to Colorado and do some stuff with my own vehicles, but I do have a couple trips coming up, and since you made it all the way to the end of this video, I'm gonna fill you in. This weekend, I am flying somewhere to pick up a new vehicle that I am actually purchasing, and it will be a pretty big piece of content here on the channel over the next year, 2 years, however long I have the vehicle. Next week, I'm actually flying to Southern California to demo some new Toyota 4Runners, and that one is going to be pretty interesting. I haven't really mentioned the 4Runner in this video at all, but it could be kind of competitive in this SUV kind of standoff. I think it's going to be a lot easier to compare the new 4Runners to the Tacomas, maybe the Land Cruisers, because it looks significantly smaller than this. It's obviously not going to be as luxury as a Lexus product, but that is coming down the pipeline. So if you guys are interested in that content, it will be coming soon. And then since we're testing out a GX right now, I'm also going to get some seat time in an LX product, one of the newest LXs, which is very similar to this, but I believe it's going to be larger, maybe even a little bit more luxury, and also hybrid. That is going to be coming right after the 4Runner videos, and I hope you guys are enjoying all of this stuff because I got a very busy schedule and I'm going to try to bring you as much information on new products this year as I can. So I really hope this video helped you guys if you're in the market for a GX550. I don't think you can really go wrong with a vehicle like this, and I'm excited to see some more people actually purchasing these and building them out. 550, a little bit of a lift, maybe a 35 underneath there. I think this thing could really go places and look super classy at the same time. So if you have any questions on the Lexus 550, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. And if you want to see some more photos and behind the scenes stuff, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'll be posting a few more things between now and the next vehicle. So that's all I got. If you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.